Hello everybody, I'm back with another Doctor Who action figure review from Character Options, and I have to admit, this release caught me a little bit by surprise because it was only announced this past Tuesday that this figure set would go up for order as an online exclusive as part of their new deluxe Vortex edition range. And just what is this Vortex Deluxe Edition all about, I hear you ask? Well, that's a good question because essentially it seems to be just a repaint of an existing figure, essentially a variant with a slightly new deco and a role-playing sonic screwdriver thrown in for good measure. Oh, and the price for this set is roughly double the price of what you pay as part of those B&M exclusives where you get 3 figures in a pack. Now, as it happens, I love the Third Doctor, so for me, this is a must-buy because I particularly like this look for the Third Doctor, and it does feature a brand new head sculpt, which we'll take a close look at in a moment. But if we start off by taking a look at the packaging, this is a new design. I don't believe we've seen this on any previous release. We have the standard new branding, sort of the 60th anniversary diamond logo there, which looks pretty cool. We have this oddly shaped box, which is kind of cool, a bit funky, a bit different. I quite like that. And, of course, we have this window display. Now, around the board, we see the TARDIS, we see this sort of vortex field, which is quite bright and colourful. I like the use of the orangey red that they've employed here, which looks pretty cool. And if we flip it to look at the side panel, we just essentially see the Doctor Who logo, and I mentioned that this is the Third Doctor. Presumably we're going to get others in this range, so we might be able to stack these up. It might have been more attractive if we'd actually had a headshot of each Doctor. That would have been kind of cool, but you know, I'll take it, it's fine. And then if we flip it to look at the reverse of the packaging, we can see that this is incredibly text heavy. There's no images or photos here at all. But what we do have is a quick summary of the story, the daemons on which this version of the costume from this figure is based on. And if we look at the interior card inlay, we can see, obviously this is essentially replicating the roundels that we see on the interior of the TARDIS, which is, you know, quite a nice choice and helps the figure sort of pop when it's in the packaging, which looks pretty cool. So all in all, fairly attractive packaging, nothing earth-shattering here, but, you know, it looks good on display. So, if you've ever owned a Third Doctor figure from Character Options in the past, you know pretty much what to expect here, because for the most part it is essentially recycled with a new paint deco. However, we do get this brand new head sculpt, and I have to say, I think we're long overdue a secondary sculpt for John Pertwee, because up to now we only had the one, which is incredible considering the number of releases we've had across the years. So how does this sculpt stack up? Well, let me say it is nicely sculpted, and the paint apps are really well done, to be fair. We can actually see a number of different washes running through the hair, which I do appreciate, and I think the blue of the eyes are actually quite striking here, which is really well done. So the paint apps are really very, very well done here, and I have to give Character Options top marks for that. In terms of the sculpt itself, as a likeness for John Pertwee, it's not bad. It's pretty good, particularly got the detail on the nose there and around the eyes, I think is pretty much spot on, which is nice, but it doesn't look quite right to me. In fact, I think probably the previous release might actually be a little bit closer. Maybe it's to do with the hair, because the hair just looks a little bit too close to the head, whereas, you know, it was a bit more of a bouffon that John Pertwee styled. So I'm not quite convinced by the hair. Also, the colouring of it being very, very grey as opposed to that sort of blondie grey, which is kind of what it is in the show. I'm not sure about that, but I do really like that it is smiling, and I think actually the detailing in the face itself is superior to what we've had previously, but I actually prefer the previous hair sculpt, if that makes sense. If I could mix and match these two, I'd take the face of this new sculpt and the hair of the previous and put them together, I think. So as part of this Vortex edition, we're supposed to see enhanced deco, and I think we've seen a little bit of that on the cravat, some extra paint there, some extra detailing, which is quite fine, and actually works really quite nicely. We also see painted on some of the button effect and a little bit of lining around the jacket there, and around the cuffs, for example, and I think, you know, this looks pretty good. We have seen this done previously, though, so I don't think it's that special, but I do really like how we see the purple of the inner lining of the cloak actually wrap around the outside of the black cloak there, which looks pretty nice. Now, this outer jacket does come off, of course, and the good news is this is a really nice soft rubber. We've had quite hard plastic in the past, which makes this quite difficult. Here, it's actually pretty easy to slip this on and off, which is really cool. And once it's off, of course, we can take a closer look at some of the detailing there around the lapels, the buttons, and the pockets. And we can see, obviously, there's just a little bit more paint that we usually get here. To be fair, I do feel as if we've had this before on a previous release. I think it was a Pertwee with the TARDIS. We've actually had this paint types before, so I don't think this is new particularly. It's also a little fainter than I would have liked. Perhaps if this had been a little bit darker, perhaps more of a black than a sort of grey that they've opted for here, this would have stood out a bit more. He does have the trouser leg and shoe combination as opposed to the boot and trouser leg that we've seen in the past. Again, this is just essentially recycled, nothing particularly new here. There is a bit of a gloss paint on the shoe, which is pretty cool, so it does contrast nicely against the matte of the trouser leg. And then if we move on to take a look at the articulation, he does have a swivel at the top of the neck there. Sadly, he can only spin his head from side to side and not 360 degrees. Disappointingly, they've just given the standard swivel at the shoulder. I was really hoping they'd give him the hinge at the shoulder this time so he could lift his arms out, but sadly, no. He has the standard swivel at the bicep, so that can rotate all the way around. Then, of course, he's got the pin at the elbow there, so that forearm will lift to about 90 degrees. And then we have another swivel at the wrist, so the hand can rotate all the way around. There's a swivel at the waist, so of course he can move from side to side. And he has the hinge at the hips, so the legs will kick out to the side. There's also a thigh swivel at the very top there. The legs will kick forwards, and there's another pin at the knee, allowing that leg to bend to about 90 degrees. Okay, so what goodies does he come with? Well, he comes with his sonic screwdriver, a repainted maggot, and this Chronos crystal accessory. Of the three items here, only the Chronos crystal is new. I don't believe we've had this before in any previous release. The maggot, interestingly enough, you'll notice in the packaging there's actually three different poses this could possibly be, because there are three different maggots. What you get is potluck. There is a rearing maggot, there's a flat one, and there's this one, which is kind of in between the two. The Chronos crystal is probably the most exciting of the three accessories because it is new, and I think they've done a pretty good job with it, and it fits nicely into his grip here, which is pretty cool. Obviously, we have his standard sonic screwdriver, which is nicely painted, to be fair. They've always done a good job here. The moulding and the sculpting is obviously unique to this version of the sonic screwdriver, which is good, and he has no problems holding this in his grip, which is great. And the maggot is pretty fun. I actually missed out on the Green Death set originally, so it is nice that I've finally got this accessory in my collection at long last, and I think it is very nicely painted. I particularly like the green deco that we're seeing there, but I do think it's a shame that we didn't get any extra new pieces here. Maybe a Metebelis 3 crystal or one of the Metebelis spiders. That would have been pretty cool and a bit different, and would have been more of an incentive for people to double dip. But to be fair, you also get this role-playing life-size sonic screwdriver. Now, to be honest, this isn't a big draw for me. I wouldn't have opted to have this, but it is a nice, fun accessory. Now, I believe that this is actually a repaint. It's actually got more of a silver metallic sheen to it, which is quite nice. And of course, if you pull it down, it does actually have some sound effects as well. Okay then, let's draw this together. For me, I'm only going to give this set 3 stars. But let's recap. What is good about this release? Well, I think it is cool that we're getting a brand new head sculpt. That is definitely worthy of attention and is very commendable. I think it's a pretty good sculpt all in all, and I'm really pleased to see a smiling Pertwee in my collection at long last. The paint deco is nice. I really like the purple of the interior of the cape, and I think what we see in the cravat and particularly the washes in the hair and on the face are really good. And the accessories aren't bad. I'm glad that we finally get a second chance to pick up a maggot, and it is good that we're getting this Chronos crystal, which is something new. However, given the price hike that we're seeing for a single figure release here, I am struggling to understand where that extra value is coming from. Yeah, it's great that we got a new head sculpt, but where are the extra features? Like, where's the hinge in the elbow? Now, we have other releases in this line that have that hinge, and it's only the classic Doctors that don't have this. I find that really frustrating, and I think this is something that would have made this much more appealing and more justifiable, I think, to actually have some extra articulation. That is really disappointing. Likewise, I'm not seeing much value add when it comes to the accessories. We've got some fun bits and pieces here, but this was definitely an opportunity to push the boat out and give us an awful lot more, and again, justify the extra cost. We could have had a TARDIS dematerialization circuit, we could have had the Metebelis 3 crystal, we could have had any number of small bits and pieces, which would have made this a lot more fun and interesting. And yeah, I know we're getting a repainted, role-playing, life-size sonic screwdriver, but this isn't something I really particularly wanted. It's nice to have, don't get me wrong, but it's not really what I collect the 5-inch scale action figure line for, if you know what I mean. These two don't feel that compatible. And all in all, I can't help feeling as if I'm just paying over the odds for a figure that I've had multiple times over, just a slightly different paint deco and a new head sculpt. And to be fair, this is the kind of thing that we've been getting from the B&M sets for a long time now, so why are we paying so much more this time around? Anyway, that's my feelings. Do let me know in the comments what you think and whether you think this does indeed justify the extra money. As ever, I love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.